There's a couple of different threads I want to explore in this video, and let's see how they come together. The first one is that I want to shed some light on this question that almost every Western mind will ask, which is Dane being entirely self-centered and self-absorbed? Of course, the answer is yes. And is that serving? In other words, we love, the DSM manual for mental emotional disease is now 5,000 labels strong and growing. Inventing new mental emotional disorders and naming them is big business. It's big business for the books. Every insurance company and stuff, every time they come up with a new bunch of labels, they've all got to buy this $200 book. And so labeling everything, from narcissism to pathology to self-centeredness to this and that and the other. It's, then there's codependency and all this stuff. We're very big on labeling things, and this is a particularly Western phenomenon. It's not like a lot of the range of human experience has been invented in the last 100 years, but most of those 6,000 labels have been invented in the last 50 years. I mean, we're big on labels at the present time. And what I see is the blind spot and the catch, because having gathered my data and statistics in the US and looked at where I was hitting walls, one of them was High teaches us to ask for our 100%. Okay, sounds good. The more I learned, I've been lovers with more than 50 people within the High community. And at every juncture, I see a slightly different situation, a slightly different Dane, because I've learned that I'm a different person based on who I'm with, number one, and the context that I'm in, number two. That this determines roughly 60% of who I am. The person I'm with, which is part of my environment, and the other parts of the environment. How long the time is, how long I've known them, the amount of integrity within the relationship, the amount of clarity, the amount of background noise. And I've learned what people and what environments bring out what I'd call amazing Dane, the Dane that has gotten compliments such as you're the most intelligent person I've ever met, I've grown more with you than anyone else, this is the most amazing conversation I've ever had in 60 years. What I'd call amazing Dane is drawn out by particular people, and it's not even the people. I would say it's drawn out by particular practices in a particular context. Of course, it's fun for all concerned for amazing Dane to make an appearance. I mean, it's fun for me, it's fun for them, it's fun for anyone who, hears about it or who learns from someone who learned something. It's fun. But there's also scary Dane. There's also, I don't know what's going on. There's also overwhelming Dane. There's also super intense Dane. And this is the same presenting persona. It's the same core chemical over here. It's kind of like we talk about chemistry, but we don't take it seriously. Because if you put muriatic acid on white concrete that's drying, it lifts off the white film and exposes all these beautiful rocks underneath. And if you put muriatic acid on plastic, it does nothing at all. And if you put muriatic acid on fresh steel, it rusts it, either creating an instant modern rust patina, if you're labeling it that way, or ruining the steel if you're labeling it that way. Now, is any of this good? Is any of this bad? I don't think so. It's relative to your goal. It's relative to your values. For someone else, they love that clean white look of white cement that's brushed and you can't see a single bit of sand or a single pebble. And acid is the enemy of that goal. And for those that love all, the maximum amount of stone on the surface and would really like that white concrete look to be in the background, acid is your best friend. And I feel a bit like that. And of course, I want to be someone's best friend. I know it is just chemistry. And unlike acid, I get to decide what country to live in. I've just decided to spend most of my life in Thailand because, it's no science, because the Thais bring out the best in me, and I bring out a lot of greatly appreciated things in the Thais. It's that simple. I'm spending 24/7 with a Filipina. There's no mystery. It's not about sex appeal. It's not about education. It's not about politics. It's about one thing. We're creating multidimensional, dense flow in directions we both value. Multidimensional, dense flow. So you have internet connection and you've got your little wire there. But is it a gigabyte a second? 10 megabytes a second? 11 kilobytes a second? That's the density, that's the bandwidth, that's the intensity of the flow. And is it happening only visually? Are you only getting audio? Are you only getting visual? Are you only getting red colors, only blue colors? We're talking about dimensions. And of course, in consciousness, we go beyond the senses. Through our imagination, we go beyond the senses. There are infinite dimensions of which we can measure and observe a few and journey off and extrapolate and go up to the edge of the others, because there's always more out there. The invention of the microscope gave us an observing and measuring device to see a whole new dimension, a whole new world. We're as limited as our observing and measuring devices. And so there's all these labels, and some sound good, like control has a bad rap. But not when you're driving a car, not when you're flying a plane, but it has a bad rap in relationships. And so nobody wants to look controlling. We all want to say, oh no, whatever you want. No, whatever you want, whatever you want. Whatever is meant to be, just happens, and I'm enjoying that. Except it didn't go the way I wanted. It wasn't meant to go the way I wanted it to go. It didn't happen the way I expected. It's quite annoying and inconvenient the way it just happens. What you wanted wasn't good for me. But I don't want to be one of those control freaks. Well, it's the same thing. See, we've got to get out of this whole pathological net that we've constructed through which to view one another, through which to have endless shades and reasons not to engage and not to connect. We've got to deal with one thing only. how can we spend our time and energy to create the most well-being? And our culture doesn't like emotion, doesn't like vulnerability, doesn't like feminine energy. And so it's got some nice traps set up. Anyone who's too emotional, well, we'll just discount them. Anyone who elicits too much emotion, that we don't want them around because they're creating too much emotion. And anything that reveals profound emotional depths, we don't want that around either, because that gets in the way of what we like in our culture, which is shopping. We love shopping. We love making money and spending money. And when we're doing that at a high rate per capita, we're number one. And we don't like learning from other people. And so as I've hit walls where just pain is being created, and the culture is not supplying the lens needed to navigate in a way that would create well-being, whether it's the high navigational tools or anything else. Part of my suicide analysis has been, let's take a tour around the world and see how other people are doing it. I learned this at a very young age because as an American, until I was 10 years old, I knew without doubt, by just looking at the faces and words of everyone around, that we knew everything better than everyone else. And I went to England for 4 years. And by the time I was done, I knew the English knew everything better than everyone else. And I saw what was news on the BBC, and I saw what was news in America. I saw the values of news are different. The scope of news is different. England is an international country, liking to look over its lost empire. So it'll bring bits from Australia and this and that and the other. America is a very self-centered country. Amongst all the countries that I've been, America is among the most self-centered. It's self-referencing, self-centered, and it makes it very easy for it to say it's the best because it's really the only thing that exists in America. Anything else that isn't American, well, it's not worth even considering. But as I took my challenges in America out to different places, I went to Copenhagen. It's amazing. There's no fear in Copenhagen. No fear. No discontent. No stress. No crisis. If you are in Copenhagen, you have gotten free, excellent health care. You've gotten free, excellent lower schooling. You have been paid a stipend by the state to go to a very good college that you enjoyed. You are therefore college educated. You do the work you want to do. If you find a new career you're excited about, you stop your job and receive unemployment. Then you go train for the new job and receive excellent government training. And then you start the new job when you've got an opening. Both man and woman, to whatever degree felt appropriate to the family's well-being, took paid maternity leave. There is government housing for anyone who needs it. There is a higher quality of life in air, water, and architectural quality. So what is there to be afraid of? In my cross-section of Copenhagen, from strangers in the park to strangers in the bus to business people to hoteliers, no one complained about their government. No one complained about their 80% taxes. And I thought, my God, I've been paying 50% of my money as a small business owner. You don't see that as an employee. It sounds much lower, but by the time you pay all the different agencies that gather money, if a client writes me a check for $100,000, what I get to spend is 50% of that. After materials, I think the materials doesn't count, but then I pay sales tax on materials as 10%. So it works out 50%. And I don't get free health care. I don't get good health care. I'm rushed. I've spent $30,000 on health care to be rushed. So I learned that the Danes do it a lot better. And I learned that this country doesn't care. They don't care that they're happy over there. They don't care that they're more ecological. They don't care that they don't have stress and disease to the same extent, because if I poll 3 Americans, 2 at least will be furious at their government. So that's fury they're carrying around endlessly. 2 of them will not be the job they most want to do. All the Danes are doing the job they want to do because they're not being penalized for following their passion. So they're all gainfully employed, doing what they most want to do and doing it well. There are no people, I didn't meet a single person lounging around who was so excited about living out off the state, because that's not who we are as human beings. When we're safe, when we get out of the sociopathic state, we want to grow, we want to contribute, we want to learn, we want to participate. That's who we are as a humanity. It's certain very corrosive elements in a capitalist, materialist system that messes with that program. The Danes have no influence either way. They make almost as much money not working as working. But because they're supported to learn, and a well-educated mind can't wait to apply that education. Someone doesn't want to go to college and then just say, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to learn anything. I don't want to apply any of all this stuff I've been practicing. I'm just going to let it all go to waste. That's not human. That's not normal. But we pretend it is. We pretend that people can't wait to milk the system and all that. But these are scared people that are milking the system. These are people in a scarcity mentality that don't believe they can make the cut, that haven't been given the education to make the cut, that feel like if they don't cheat in some way, they're not going to make it, and that this country isn't going to care. I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like. And so there are a lot of places around the world that are doing it better than we are. So the Danes have eliminated fear. There's no undertone of anxiety and fear in Copenhagen. As an empath, it was the first time I'd ever experienced that. And it was like the sense of space in the culture, the sense of being able to enjoy it, it just opened up for me like 300%. Because as an empath, I am processing this country's fear day after day after day. Then I'm processing its passionate denial positivism to defend and hide its fear. Everything's great, everything's great. Don't say anything's wrong, everything's great. I'm 2 months away from being on the street, but I'm gonna be positive today. Whew. I don't know how long I can keep this up. Let's have another Red Bull drink. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I've got to hold all that. First the fear, then the denial of fear. It's fucked up. Can we talk about it? No, that's feminine, that's emotional. We're built on rugged, masculine individuals. So the Danes are doing it literally 300% better than we are. And we don't want to learn. The Danes learn a lot from us. They take our best ideas and stuff. They love Americans. I'm really welcome in Denmark. I go to Italy. They do a better job of femininity and circuitous roots and the beautiful aspects of that in some ways. And that's about it. They do that better than any other European country I've found. The British are more stubborn and traditional and argumentative and stuff in some way. They have a much better sense of humor. All my humor was educated by British comics. And the ties. They know how to see someone in presence. They have a liquid presence that's there amongst the poorest. You know, they can be making $10 a day. And I'm measuring and observing and feeling 3 to 7 times the presence, the grace, the beauty as I am in the statistical sampling. These are probability fields. There's plenty of individual anomalies. That's not the point. If we want anomalies, focus on the individual. If you want to create a culture where something is the norm, you focus on the cultural values, the cultural programs, the government policies. It's a big deal to have a socialist democracy instead of a capitalist democracy. Social, is about the welfare of the people, and democratic. And business has a very strong role in there. There are more billionaires per capita, in Scandinavian countries than in the United States. More billionaires per capita. I mean, there's not more billionaires, the population is much less. But per capita, they're doing rich better than we are. They're doing beauty better than we are. They're doing health better than we are. They're doing relaxation better than we are. They're doing relationship better than we are. There's very little they're not. Innovation, which is, I would say, our gift, radical individualism and innovation. This is the fruits of American shopping. We have cheaper stuff shipped to our door faster than anywhere I've seen in the world. I can be in Thailand, right next to China, and things will take, there'll be 40% less selection, 10 to 40% higher cost, and 40% more friction around the transaction. So the Thais have presence, joy, family, a sense of the sacred, and a bad shopping experience. We have a great shopping experience and a manic rat race, relatively speaking, statistically speaking. I'm not interested in any culture. I'm not interested in all the labels and this and that. I'm interested in you. I'm interested in what needs to happen for well-being to go up. And I don't care what it's called. Narcissism helps. If control helps, if self-centeredness helps, so be it. What I'm very clear about is that patterns that a culture wants to protect, it keeps secret. It's very easy law. You just make the pattern taboo to talk about, and you shame everyone who exposes the pattern, and the pattern is nicely protected indefinitely. Because the first step of change is recognition. Well, if no one can see the pattern, because no one's talking about the pattern because it's shameful, like this culture would have us believe that Hai is to be shamed for its mistakes, that Peter is to be shamed and perhaps imprisoned for his mistakes, that I'm to be shamed for my mistakes, that I'm to be imprisoned. I mean, the joke when you really get into it. This country is so worried about my health So worried about my health. And the fact that because psychedelics and consciousness has not been studied enough for us to have, a zero death rate. I mean, we have death rate around alcoholism, smoking, driving. That's fine. We don't have zero death rates around that. The risk of going horseback riding is 300 times higher than the risk of taking magic mushrooms at a high dose. 300 times higher. Doesn't matter. It's not, so in other words, we're not being, but anyway, this government, who doesn't care to protect me from horseback riding, who hasn't banned horses or horseback riding or anything like that, is so concerned about your and my safety, very concerned, that rather than leave me to the horrors and the vagaries and this miserable stuff that could happen to my body that's not even scientifically detectable, it will kindly bash down my door, lead me into an expensive court case for 6 months, terrorize my family, break up, leave my children, fatherless, motherless, ruin the family mortgage because I can't work, and put me in prison at $80,000 a year of your money so that I can't hurt myself. But it won't protect me from horseback riding. I mean, this is the level of benevolent, sociopathic, unscientific absurdity in just that area alone. And yet, heaven help the citizen who actually diverges from the culture, from the community norm, the social norm, the country norm, the legal norm, to do something that creates more well-being per unit of energy invested than the norm. My book, 101 Choices on My Path to Well-Being, had a very important, and the thoughts that made them possible, had a very important subtitle: Choosing Happiness Over Normalcy. Because I've identified this value as the number one pivot point. You can be happy or you can be normal. But in many cases, you cannot do both. My happiness went up significantly when I left school to do my own self-designed homeschooling program. My happiness, my education, my success, my health. My costs went down significantly. I was going to a private Waldorf school at the time. Everyone was against it. Not a single supporter. But the data was all for it. 3 years into it, parents were saying, I wish my kids were like you. I'd say, simple. Take them out of school. Give them these subjects. Tell them to learn what their learning style is, and design it for them, and make most of their learning contributory and experiential. Don't waste their time writing a paper that no one wants to read, but a teacher has to read, so that the only person who's forced to read it is the only person who has to stay up late grading it, and then waste all that time. Don't do it. When I learned creative writing, I said, I'm not going to waste my time on papers. I'm going to pick topics that interest me. I'm going to write great articles. I'm going to read books on article writing, I'm going to send these articles into the magazine. And when every single one of my articles was published at age 14, and when the editor said I was the only one she didn't have to edit, and when she picked one on the cover, and when the local bank paid me money to gather a teen in section from people off the street that I thought were much more interesting than people going to school. And I got poetry from people off the street and all that. It was much more interesting than anything I was doing at school. I said, I give myself an A. I don't care what my teacher says. I don't care about that diploma. I don't care about a piece of paper. If I can communicate effectively and not waste time, that's intelligent. It's good enough for me. I pity those teachers staying up at night grading those papers. First forcing the kids to write them because they have to, and then forcing themselves to sit up and grade them because they have to. And no one benefits at all. And let's build them a building for this prison. It's a joke. Absolute joke. Let's separate all the kids from life to prepare them for life. And let's see how well they do once we take them back out of this artificial environment we've created. It's an absolute joke. Not a single parent who complained that their kids were not as motivated, were not as intelligent, were not as successful, were not as proactive as me, were willing to do anything I suggested. I think I've had probably 130 parents over my lifetime ooh and ah over the results of my style of education, and then simultaneously absolutely refuse to do anything with their kids. Well, of course. I mean, it's not the kids. It's the protocol and the environment. It's not the patient. It's the protocol, the technology, and the hospital. Bodies want to be healthy. And we have this strange dynamic in the mental emotional body, which is far more complicated in a chauvinistic and sociopathic culture that shuts off our awareness of brain. I mean, how are we going to heal something we've been trained not to see? We've been trained to lie about. I mean, we're not trained to hide our elbow. We don't go around saying, nobody show the elbow. Don't tell the doctor you've got an elbow. Oh, they're going to shame you if you've got an elbow. They're going to tell you, why do you have that elbow? Why can't you be normal? Because everyone else is hiding their elbow. Why are you talking? We don't do this kind of dumb stuff with a physical body. So we're getting pretty good. We're not as good as the Thais. My teeth cleaned and 3 fillings for $103 by a more polite and sensitive dentist with 30 minutes appointment notice in an average Thai dentistry with no painkiller, because he's much more attuned and empathic. He can watch my facial expressions and be gentle. Oh, we can't have that. My dentist over here, $700-800. Got to have insurance for all the people that are going to trump up weird charges. Have to have painkiller because we don't care about people's feelings around here. That's average. 700. We don't have a healthcare budget problem. We have a cultural absurdity problem that could be solved by having the Thais run our healthcare system and throwing out most of the laws which are unnecessary when you have human beings that care more about the patient than getting home at 6 p.m. or increasing their salary. As soon as you have people who care more about people than about the symbols of success and happiness, the symbols, as soon as you have people not worshiping the golden cow and actually caring about one another, 99% of the laws aren't necessary. Though in Brazil don't have any crime, don't have any rape, don't have any incest, don't have any raised voices, don't have any violence. They don't have a police force. They're attuned to one another. If we could learn that, which is why high is so important. I'm not wasting my time with all of this, knowing that a great deal of it will not sink in, knowing that my audience will not relate quite possibly with a good third of what I'm saying, and will see the bits that they do relate to very differently than I do, and may even attack me, because that's what we do with people who speak up in vulnerable and emotional areas. That's what we do. We have all kinds of protocols to shut up this dialogue. The military was doing it in the 60s when Vietnam vets came back an absolute mess. Let's just deny it exists. So we don't have to pay for it. The British did it around the First World War. Banned the term shell shock from all scientific literature, refused to fund any science on PTSD, and instead shamed every one of their men and told them the real men didn't get PTSD. So the very fact that you had it made you not a real man, which made you not valuable and not worth and you should be ashamed of it. You should be ashamed that you're not a real man. So go home in shame. And don't come sniveling to us for asking you to lay down your life to protect our fucked up concept of a culture. Because we don't care about people either. We care about king and country. We care about our dogmas. The Brits were as enamored as we ever are about being the greatest and da-da-da. The stiff upper lip just means denial of feminine energy, denial of emotion. So, inappropriate, gossip, indiscreet, rude, inconsiderate, inefficient. I mean, those are just a few of what our culture has to throw at what I'm saying to make sure that it doesn't sink in, we don't do anything about it. But anyone who cares about people, anyone who's intelligent to know that most patterns are not personal, anyone who sees that 10% of our population are sensitive, which means that if you've got 10 friends, you or one of them, and possibly more, because sensitives often tend to connect well together because everyone else abuses them by refusing to acknowledge that what's painful to their ears should be fine, because it's fine for someone who doesn't have an ear tuned in that way. Which is shame. Again, so many sensitives in our world are shamed. They're abused, they're dissociated, they're traumatized much more than the rest, and then they're shamed for being dysfunctional. The ignorance, stupidity, and shamefulness of the culture gets projected onto the most vulnerable scapegoats who are asked to carry all the symptoms of the dysfunction within the culture, number one. And then 2, be shamed for it. And then 3, shut up about it. Don't you dare ruin our party by talking about any of this. Because we might have to get off our fucking assholes and do something about it. And it's hard when we're in a capitalist system where if it doesn't make money, if it doesn't get an adrenaline fix to manage our panic, to manage our exhaustion, we don't see how it's logical to do it. I'd love to take care of you, but I don't have the money. I can't do it in a way that makes money, and I've got to worry about this because I'm a few weeks away from being bankrupt, losing my house, on the street. I'm in debt and I'm scared. Great. Fear does work to motivate tremendous frenetic energy. Necessity is one of the mothers of invention. Our individualism, the panic of shame, the fuck it, you're all on your own, do whatever you want with your life, you can make it, mythology of the American man that is now being competed with and added to we can do it better, women, and in many areas they can, women can run a company better than a man can because they don't have quite as much into their ego, so they can make better company decisions. But nonetheless, it's just expanding the myth to include women. It's not focused on how can you and I have the most positive impact on our people today. Whether that's spending absolutely nothing, making absolutely nothing, listening, hearing, caring, or inventing an app that tracks our relatives' feelings. We're not doing that. And we could have our well-being go up by 2/3 in 5 years if we pivoted to a scientific well-being paradigm where the only question anyone has to ask and justify is not how much money they're making, not how much resources they're wasting or using, not how much they're spending and not how much they have, but how many people have you brought well-being to? How many people, how did you do it, and how much resources and energy did you need to take, to use to achieve that goal? And the rock stars would be people who are helping thousands of people increase their quality of well-being sustainably, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and spending almost nothing. Some technique of thought, some technique of ritual, a new word, some new vocabulary, a book that's given away free online. And thousands of people's well-being are going up. And we're learning through tracking it scientifically, through everyone comparing notes. Ooh, $2 for water purifiers in North Dakota where they've got poisoned water. If we could build one big purifier for the whole area, needs about $100 million up front, and then from then on out, plastic is taken out of the stream, this and that. That's the cheapest way we could possibly increase a bunch of well-being today. Let's do it. And then over here, we can nominate, we can compete to create the most well-being with the least amount of resources. Now, one of the reasons I care about high, and I care about high more than I care about the agendas of a given facilitator or the whole facilitator body. I care about high because it creates enormous levels of well-being per dollar invested. It's a hero. It's a hero in the scientific well-being paradigm. Stan Dale gave birth to a technology that creates enormous units of well-being. My $30,000 invested in high workshops have increased my well-being and rippled out to thousands of other people. I sent a book to 5,000 Thai women. That book would not have happened without high. And in that book, I looked at every source of pain I was observing in a sampling of 100 Thai women. I analyzed what would be the information that would be medicinal in preventing that pain, understanding and healing that pain. wrote it all down and gave it away. That's how I met Weepa. She liked the book. I want to bring this home by saying that the patterns that I'm talking about in myself, in the relationship with Hai, in the relationship with my parents, are not just about me. You may only hear me talking about them. You may hear, and probably will hear me, using these particular words. I may be the only one talking about it in this way, to this degree, and certainly in this context. But the patterns that I'm talking about can be found in any sampling of 100 people. So we're dealing with patterns that affect a minimum of 1 in 100. And my own impression of it is that they strongly relate to 20 people in 100. The patterns are ignorance around sensitivity, which is hurting about 20 people in 100 on average. It's hurting the people that don't understand the sensitives. Sensitives are beautiful, particularly when they're not traumatized into dysfunction. It's the kind of beauty that needs the skill. See, when a sensitive is dysfunctional, it has nothing to do with the sensitive. It has everything to do with the insensitivity and ignorance of the environment around it. When a butterfly is stepped on, you don't tell the butterfly, beef up those wings with a bit of reinforced steel and you might survive next time. Grow bigger and taller, become a 2-ton bull, and anytime anyone steps on you next time, ram them in the throat. That'll solve it. And it does. But there's no more butterfly for anyone to enjoy. If you want butterflies to be in their natural beauty, it requires the training of the people in the environment of butterfly habitat, not the butterfly. So 20 people out of 100 lack the skills to take care of themselves or the sensitives they love and or are attracted to. And that includes Peter. And the pain that a sensitive feels is magnified by anywhere from 2 to 10 times. And being around an agonized sensitive is a painful experience for anyone who's paying attention. So that's one pattern we're dealing with. It can be dealt with simply. The book, The Highly Sensitive Person, covers a lot of that. I've written a book, Maps to Love, as my kind of internalization. I always write books so I remember things. My book, Maps to Love, and I taught a meetup group for a number of years because I realized what a big deal it had made. And I realized no professional, including Hai, had told me this is a huge omission. It's shaming. It's shaming. To give someone a car with no gas and say, go get him. It's like, I'm not moving. Well, just have a positive attitude. No, you need the technology. And sensitivity and understanding highly sensitive people, which I already know statistically, half of you who don't know what's in that book are completely misunderstanding my definition, which is based on the book's definition of being highly sensitive. It's not being highly courteous, highly nice, doing everything what everyone else wants. If you've got a screaming in your ear that you can't stand, you may be the rudest person in the room because you're in pain and no one understands and no one is reducing the volume and everyone's resisting you and pointing you towards the speaker. Come on, get in there. Don't be shy. Get in there. Ah! You have enough of that where you're pushed as a sensitive because you care and you don't want to create discord. So you're pushed, like I was pushed by Peter, in a toxic direction without any regard for understanding the sensitivity and what it's affecting. And when someone who says they love you keeps pushing you into the fire and you start burning and screaming and they don't react, they just keep pushing, you're going to punch them out or tell them to back off or leave or whatever because you don't want to burn and you're dealing with an idiot. Not an idiot in the shameful sense. There's nothing shameful about being an idiot. We're all idiots until we learn. Read the book. Read the book. That's pattern number 1, sensitivity. Shame is a traumatic event. We need to understand shame, and we have to understand that what we're shaming in this culture, shame is a culturally engineered phenomena, what we're shaming in this culture is almost everything healthy. I can't hold a baby in a park. I can't look at a child in a park in the United States for more than 10 seconds without fear. I am scanned as an enemy if I give focused attention to an American child. I am welcomed, invited to the table, cooked for, loved, laughed with, and seen as a friend if I play with a Thai stranger for an hour. In Thailand, the first time my motorbike ran out of gas was 1 a.m. on a dark street, and I'm a complete stranger of another race. The first 2 people to cross my path was a 12-year-old and an 18-year-old Thai girl who don't even speak my language. And their number 1 concern is that a guest in their country, doesn't matter the gender, the race, a guest in their country needs help. They come over without fear. They see what's going on, I give them some money, they leave, they come back with gas. And that's why I'm moving to Thailand. Because I am not the enemy. I am not feared. And those girls will not be humiliated when they go home. You fool, you idiot, you didn't know that man. He could have done this, he could. Their parents are not making me into something disgusting. They know the reality that most people are good. And they want to have a culture based on that expectation, rather than a culture of paranoia that projects rage, fear, and ugliness on every single young man. The more there is attention or kindness. I'm left alone in this country as long as I pretend that nobody else exists. I go towards a woman, I go towards a man, I go towards a child, and something is up, because we don't do this in America. The last time I saw a Thai child, he was wailing on his father's knee, and the father was on a phone call. And because I've learned that I can be loving in Thailand, I walk over, neither the boy or the father knows me. There's no alarm on their face, because I'm not presumed guilty. Any intelligent human being would care for a child. What's so odd? And I hold the child. He's about 6, 7 years old. 6, 7-year-old in America would be absolutely terrified of me. Why? Because they've watched their parents' eyes. They don't know what it is. It's not like hordes of American men are beating all these child every day in the park. But these fucked up news stories get exaggerated, and 1 in 100,000 becomes the projection to all men. It's crazy. The amount of terror I see in young women's eyes when I smile at them in a dance. It's like I don't even want to smile. Who wants to smile when it creates that kind of fear and anger and turn away? It's like, okay, I'll be miserable just so you're all comfortable. It's pathetic, absolutely pathetic. And with the current fucked up definition of feminism, this is out of line. You don't talk like that. We don't talk like that. I'm just saying why I don't like going to dances in this country. It's not fun. Unless I'm dealing with an over 50 crowd who isn't scared of me because they probably think I'm not interested in them. You know, it's this whole weird algorithm and stuff. But anyway, it's miserable over here. It's wonderful over there. You want to love and be kind as a man? Go to Thailand. It's wonderful. No one's going to hate you and hurt you and project all kinds of crap on you. And I get to love children. I get to hold them. I get to help them when they're sad. I get to play with them. I get to smile. And I'm not having children because my parents should not have had children. And I haven't gotten the support that I need to be healthy enough, sustainably, to not traumatize a child sometimes. Because it's all about state. I'm in control in the park. I don't walk up to someone and hold their child when I'm completely overwhelmed and stressed out and need to sit in a quiet place for 2 hours. If I start feeling like that, I give it back to the parent gently. I know myself. I go back and I meditate, and the child doesn't have to deal with that overwhelm in an environment that may overwhelm me because it's not tracking me. We live in a world where the individual isn't tracked, even in Thailand. No one's taking notes. How sensitive are the people in this restaurant? We'll modulate the music accordingly. How tired are you as you get in? Can you get out of this space, or is the weather too bad? No one's tracking that. There's no psychology in that context, but there's something much more important in Thailand. Anyone who is upset about anything gets care and help for no other reason than that they are upset. That's all that matters. There isn't 6,000 diagnoses. There isn't a mental thing. There isn't a score about fairness. There isn't a this. There isn't about that. They don't even need to know the reason. Oh, that music's bothering you? We'll turn it down. That violent movie in the corner of your eye is drawing you and giving you indigestion. We'll turn it off. Or what other channel would you like? There's an incredible amount of grace. So I don't have to feel like I'm at war with the environment to bring my pain down to a manageable level. And that's a gift, because I do not want to be at war. Sensitives don't like to be at war, and the cruel joke with an insensitive culture that doesn't even track and monitor its sensitives is that the environment is so insensitive that a sensitive is forced to either endure an enormous amount of pain or do something they absolutely hate doing, which is go to war with people that don't understand and give them pushback that is felt much stronger. You know, like with that mushroom scenario where Peter's advocating for 3 mushrooms and I'm saying 1 is plenty. I argued for about 2 minutes, but I'm trying to open up into partnering with the universe for this ritual. I'm not going to battle with the inner world. I don't want to battle with my shaman. I want who I am and my preference to be supported and welcomed. And since Peter doesn't have the skill or ability to do that in that particular moment and has his own agendas of wanting to be the shaman who produces this profound experience in the shortest amount of time and earns his money and all whatever it is he's got going on and got to do this, oh, you know. I let him push me. Meet him halfway. Because I'm tired of fighting everyone. All the time. I'm tired. Very, very, very tired. And that's one reason I need help. But that's also something that grates on me. Is I had an experience with the constellation therapist after all of this. As I said, I was so fed up with human beings at this point, and just disappointed one step after another. And it's like, how could I ever have prepared or imagined this and kept myself safe in this? It's like if I've got to anticipate this amount to be safe in this culture, I'm done for. Who would guess? So I ask. This is completing one of the circles. I have so many spirals. I see them all in a second, by the way. I'm in my first second of visualization, meaning I'm still describing images and patterns that I saw in the first second of making this video. And I'm an hour into verbalizing it. And as Terence McKenna likes to say, one of our biggest limitations, Elon Musk is saying the same thing, one of the biggest limitations we have is that we have a multi-dimensional, very complex, imaginal, visual brain. And we've got verbal language, and it's like 10 kilobytes a second. We're seeing and understanding the world at a gigabyte to 20 gigabytes a second. But we're only able to let the other person into our world 10 kilobytes at a time. And if I don't take all these hours, you have no idea what I mean or where I'm coming from. And even if you do, when I spend 24/7 with someone for months, they're only getting about 40% of what's going on in there. It's a big frustration for me. It's one of the reasons I write. It's one of the reasons I'm now doing hundreds of hours. This is a very tiny slice of what I'm talking about. Because I get to learn and integrate in these videos. I get to experience more nuance. I get to translate imagery into language. And it's not an object that can be related to until it's in language. And part of my brain can't relate to my own images until it's in language. So this is a very important step. We've got roughly a third of the population in varying degrees from severe to very severe repressed, undiagnosed trauma. And this is so rampant that this third, like me, is functioning to a large degree through the lens of coping strategies. I don't like parties because it brings this up. I don't like that because it brings that up. I can't do that because the body that is suppressing these emotions can't handle that. I can't get to sleep in this environment because there's so much going on in there. I'm so jumpy with the level I'm revved up to. I can't do this. I can't eat this. I can't do that. It's a coping reality. And in our current state of ignorance as a culture, we do the equivalent of going up to an old woman or an injured man and say, "Why are you carrying that stick?" Seems a lame thing to do when you got two legs. Get rid of it. Be cool. Get rid of that stick. Why you got a stick? It's not as good as a leg. Doesn't look very nice. You're leaning at an odd angle. Here, let me take that stick. You don't need this stick. I'm falling, come on, get up. Come on, be positive. Get rid of this stick. Be positive. We would never be this barbaric and call it love with an injured man, an old woman, an injured woman with a walking stick. Because we're dealing with the mental body. But I have had my emotional walking stick kicked away from under me more than 1,000 times with people that didn't see it, didn't think twice, judged and insulted me for doing so. Certainly weren't going to stop and help me up emotionally. I might take 4 days to get back on my feet emotionally. By some sociopath, someone not attuned to people themselves, and certainly not to my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, coming out and just taking a swipe, and in 2 seconds, the walking stick goes flying. I'm flat on my back, a back they don't see because it's emotion. And I spend 4 days crawling my way up, and someone else comes along and takes a whack at it. And if I become bitter, angry, hurting, scared, paranoid about when the next person is going to do it, that's the new walking stick. The walking stick to protect the walking stick in a culture that's this ignorant. The Thais don't do this, by the way. They assume that if you're doing anything with any kind of attachment or intensity, that it's important, and therefore everyone else who has more flexibility in that area goes around it. They have this wonderful system. It's a wonderful system. These very elaborate arrangements of taking care of the imbalances within the family. Like if one person has a gambling problem, they don't do a confrontation, they don't shame them, they don't argue with them, any of that, but they collaborate as a family to see there isn't loose change around for gambling for that person. They might talk with the local casino, if my mother comes in, don't do this. And they don't have as many terrains and, stuff like this. Or another person likes to show off by, giving away money to kind of compete with the neighbors or whatever. And so they make sure that that person has just enough money to take care of all their needs forever, but not enough to show off to the neighbor. And they all help one another. This is done with a great deal of love. My simplistic mind said, that's dishonest. You tell that person you're not going to give them any money because they're gambling and it's wrong and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, no. That's not how we do things in our culture. No. My sister lives in the house with my mother. She takes care of her. She knows what's going on. When my mother calls me for money, I call my sister. I say, does she really need it, or is this just some... And then I give it to my sister, and my sister makes sure that she has it. And we're all happy together, and we don't attack and da-da-da-da-da. Well, it's not my style, as you can tell. I'm not... I haven't been brought up in a 4,000-year-old unmolested culture. Many of the Thais have. We're smart human beings. The more a culture has on this planet, it often improves. It often improves. The Thais have a beautiful culture. One of the most spiritual and enlightened people. I learned so much from my taxi driver on the way, just from Bangkok earlier today. It's just amazing. And he wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. But it's the way he navigates his energy in a way that's connected to who he is and still gets things done. And he does it way better than I do. Way better than I do. It's beautiful to see. And it's so funny to laugh, because here I've written these books and, spent all these hundreds of thousands of dollars in doing this and working. And This man will never take a high workshop. And yet, he's got so much more grace, so much more skill, so much more intelligence at creating maximum well-being with the least amount of effort than I do. I love that. I just love it. It's one of my greatest joys is being wrong and finding out that, everything that I thought was this way is completely absurd. I love that. It's great entertainment because people are always telling me how smart I am. And I know it's a joke. I'm not smart. The smartest person I ever met made people happy every time she entered the room. She had didn't even finish high school, wasn't articulate, always demurred, yet everyone loved her and it's like, she's smart. She brings joy and well-being everywhere she goes. I'm lucky if I do it a third of the time, and I spend literally 100 times the energy that she spends to do a third. And of course I'm exhausted. I don't know what I'm doing. But part of my gift, knowing that I'm a product of this culture, a product of the obsession with the left brain and language, part of my gift is to say, you probably don't either. We don't know what we're doing in this culture, and we can't start caring for one another a little bit more kindly until we do. So I'm talking about sensitivity, I'm talking about trauma. And the trauma is the big one, because what your coping strategy is, what the walking stick is that's helping you deal with trauma that's undiagnosed, unconscious, repressed, ignored, shamed, in varying states of volatility and triggerability and confusion, what your coping strategy is, whether it's rationalism, whether it's being critical, whether it's taking the offensive, whether it's being controlling, whether it's being completely passive, whether it's withdrawal. It doesn't matter what it is. It helps you feel safe that you are not going to feel the helplessness, the grief, the terror, the silence, and the dread of an emotion so big you lose yourself in it, and that you realize neither you nor anyone around you knows what to do in this situation. And so you're fucked. The coping mechanism protects us from this awareness of a reality that is very real within the mental, emotional body and all the psychosomatic connections between our three bodies. My terror, my tension, my exhaustion, my chronic fatigue, it's not really a separate body. My body's been asked to carry these lies for so long, to protect my Western brain, who hasn't been prepared to deal with this terrain. And the biggest denial we do, because it's a little bit like the world. We can go to the beach in California and say, there are no problems in the world, it's all wonderful. Yeah, because you're on the beach in California and you've got enough money and you've got the skills and the language and all that, so it's all wonderful. At the exact same moment in time, go over to this other terrain. Join the middle of one of Duterte's drug raids. Head over to where the Catholics are shaming some little girl for not loving her parents and become that little girl. Join some other, because at any moment in time there's a pocket in the world. At the same time, where if your consciousness is there, you're in absolute hell. You are in desperate trauma. And you don't know what to do, and there's no help for you. That's location. Now, we have the exact same thing mirrored within our psyche at any moment in time. It's like, you think I can't put on an act? Or, well, it would be an act, because when those, when the psilocybin and stuff dissolve those walls, that dam broke. I no longer had the choice. The partitions that had been enculturated into me of all the repressed rage, grief, hate, terror, and loneliness of this culture just washed over me. And I had no anticipation that it was coming. Didn't know what it was. It was overwhelming because it was scary to Peter. He abandoned me. There's nowhere to go in this culture for that. And that's a problem, because we've all got that. There's an area in all of our brains, in all of our minds, in all of our psyche, both in other lifetimes, if that happens to be your cup of tea, and within this lifetime, in which we have seen profoundly lonely and terrifying things happening to other people, happening to ourselves, happening to those we love. And it is a terrifying thing to love, and love deeply and care deeply in this kind of a world. So maybe the coping strategy is to hide the love and pretend we don't love anyone. That takes a lot of energy, because love is our core flow. We're fucked as soon as we adopt that as our coping strategy, because we've got to spend enormous amounts of energy suppressing how much we love. Because it's big, and it deserves enormous respect. It's who we are, it's why we're here. And loving our hate is part of that. Because hate is just a reflection of the environment an individual finds themselves in. It's a clue. It's a smoke detector saying something's off here. The environment is sick. Not the individual, the environment is sick. And you can tell that, in part, going back to this circle here, when I couldn't connect with human beings. And so I asked the constellation therapist to embody different deities that I don't have names for. Names don't matter. But I have senses of their resonance, their colors, their pictures, their geometric shapes. Very high resonances, beautiful states, and I asked him to embody them. And I'm in some of the, the most agonizing loneliness and pain of my, that I've ever experienced. I'm completely overwhelmed, and then I'm panicked that I'm so panicked, because I realize I don't have a coping strategy for this. I wasn't prepared for this. I don't know what to do. I feel in danger, and a danger to myself and others, and I don't know what to do, and I have nowhere to ask for help, because the people I'm asking help from have agendas that are so thick with unexpressed fears, shames, rage, that I end up, as an empath, picking up that gets confusing. Their fear it makes it worse. My symptoms got 5 times worse after I asked for help from the facilitator body. 5 times worse. And you don't blame the patient. You look at the protocol. You look at the diagnosis. Of course, there was no diagnosis. They met without me to decide what was going on. Of course they don't know. And what they were going to do about it. Why would they include the patient or anything in their prescription? They're the facilitators. In a world of language where people do have control, the label of the leader or whatever holds weight. In a world of feminine energy and emotion where there is no control, where that control has been lost in overwhelm, words have no meaning like leader or facilitator. You either help the water dissipate or you flood the area more. That's all there is to it. It's a technical equation. It's no longer a political equation. Peter had so misread in this terrain. I was, every one of these, as I realize how out of touch they are. Peter said, he's studying something at Stanford, so he said, we're learning this new language, and in my new language, what you're doing is a bid for attention. And so good for you, you've got my attention now. It's like, Peter, I nearly killed someone on the road the other day because I've done my best to please you and follow your protocol, which is the opposite of what I asked for. And I've got no one else to turn from, you fucking asshole. You can call it whatever you want. Do you have any skill, empathy, or intelligence in there that could actually help a human being that you've hurt, confused, lied to, strung along, betrayed? And I could give a shit what you call that. It's like, oh my gosh, are we going to have language games about this? It's just outrageous. And the joke is, for me, the healing didn't come from the high facilitators and all this and that and the other. The pattern was so dangerous and convoluted with agendas and unspoken energy, it just kept ramping things up every single bit of it. Was like, wow, I had no idea things were this bad at high. I am in deep shit. I'm losing all my support. And I didn't plan for this. I didn't plan for this. I'm fucked. I literally felt like my mind might start splitting. And that was terrifying because that's my primary coping strategy. It's not my primary source of well-being, it's my primary coping strategy. But it's where the ego needs a sense of certainty in something or it just shatters. It's very fragile, the ego. And yet we can't operate a physical body without it. There's all this crap about attacking the ego. It doesn't help. You transcend the ego by making the ego feel so safe, loved, and secure that its sociopathic agendas are not necessary to ensure its survival, and they calm way down, and then the human being starts having transcendent experiences. The sociopathic reptilian brain lets the human go up to the human brain, the empathic, the understanding brain, and then into the hypothalamus and into these transcendent states, not by killing and chopping off the reptilian brain, just not traumatizing it. Understanding it, stop judging it, stop attacking it, stop labeling it, just accepting. It's just so wonderful. So wonderful. I feel literally medicinally healed. There's these women in rags on the street. We would call them rags in our stupidity. It's their garments. They sit there all day, talking to one another, in company, happy, and this great energy. And anyone who comes along, including me, and I'm curious, what's this and what's that? Oh, please eat this, please. They're so delighted to see me. They see me. And they're not trying to put a label on me. I could just sit with these old women without saying a word. The last thing I want to do is waste their time with one of my books. And they bring me a joy that I can't find in my own country. I don't know where these old women are in this country. could we, what do you want? What, you're too young for me. Yep, no. Maybe next Tuesday after my tennis appointment, but let's make it productive. You know, what do you got in your mind? What do you want? No, I got to cancel. No, I have something at work. Bye. We'll catch up later. I mean, I can do that run around for hours and not have that kind of experience. And I realize, you know, I want to give these people $1,000 because they're helping me more than my therapists are. Because one of the things that I realized when I sat down with these deities is that I'm not sick. I'm reactive in a very sick culture, and I'm very reactive because it's like been sunburn on sunburn on sunburn on sunburn on sunburn. And every time I say that sunburn, please cut it out. Now you get more sunburn for saying that. Stop being so controlling. Don't tell me what to do. Sunburn, sunburn, sunburn. That's just so painful. It's like, does anyone care that this hurts? I don't care if it's sunburn. I don't care if it's control. I don't care what it is. Cut it out. Pay attention. There's a human being here. Pay attention. Can't one educated person do what these old women do on the street? What these deities do? You know, it's and that's one of the things that's got, so, you know, as I say, the beauty of constellation therapy is you get to have this simulated sense of who you become when you are in the presence of this, this, and this. Well, who I become when the facilitator is, you know, playing the high facilitators, mountains of shame. You know, it's like, can I crawl out of this mess? Who I become when he's embodying these geometric shapes, this high resonance, it's complete pace, complete peace. I don't have to use language. My words aren't twisted around. Complete peace. It's wonderful. I wish I had the skill and the lack of education to access that 24/7. It wouldn't matter what all this bullshit is in the culture and the president and this. It wouldn't matter. Because none of it matters on those dimensions. It's, you know, a big joke of human concoction on some level. And yet, the trapped, shamed, terrified, traumatized, frightened, shamed again, overstimulated human ego. All these things are dangerous, are terrifying, are stressful, are exhausting. But the ego has nothing to defend against a deity of that nature. I'm not talking about a Christian deity or anything like that. I'm just saying, you know, light coming through in a way of complete acceptance and opening. It has no gripe with anything at all about me, just presence. And I have no gripe with it. And suddenly I have no gripe with myself, and suddenly I'm out of all reaction. And I realize I'm well if I'm in a healthy environment, and I'm very sick in this environment. I've got to change the environment. You know, I can pathologize myself all I want. I can pathologize the pathology and pathologize the way that I spoke. Oh, I didn't say the pathology of quite right. It should have been this. And I can do that forever, and I don't feel that grace. It's not even the right mind, I don't think, to use for this healing. But we are limited to language, and, you know, talking to you, I'm using it. But these things are in our space. At least 40% of 100 people are dealing to some degree with what I'm talking about. And how they're dealing with it is much harder because these things are not talked about. And it's my hypothesis that a sensitive or a traumatized person who watches all these videos and then goes to high may be able to take 30% better care of themselves and thus contribute 30% more to the community than if they didn't watch them. So I don't care about anything else if that is the case. I mean, it's a hypothesis. I may just get 100 reasons why every single person hates something about it. Because our brain does dwell on the negative, the threat. And this is threatening. It's threatening to our culture, it's threatening to our family ties, it's threatening to our agendas. But the bottom line is, I do think it's very important that we be clear about what patterns are actually helping people, and that people don't end up paying money to get hurt, and that isn't okay by any stretch of the imagination. And that if we want people to continue growing in this world, which I do, amends are made at a level to where someone doesn't feel penalized, where, like, when I add up all my therapeutic encounters, I say a third of them hurt me, a third of them it's hard to tell one way or another, or there's pros and cons, and I kind of average this out, and the third helped me. Ann Watts is in one of the categories that helped more than ambivalent or not. She never took something to me. She never imposed, for better and for worse. I mean, she didn't try and seduce me or try and get me to do this or that or the other. At the same time, she educated me about Asperger's, and she educated me about perfectionism pattern. And yet, I believe there is the opportunity for Anne to increase her effectiveness by about 40%, and to have helped me and all the people. I mean, Anne and I did joint therapy with 5 high women. And I want to talk a little bit about how this is showing up, because many of you, like when I ever heard the word trauma on the radio, it was only on the radio, and it was like, of course, Iraqi veterans had bombs blowing up in their face. That's not me. And I suspect that a lot of you listening to this are saying, well, this isn't me, or that's not my relationship, or whatever. But my impression is that a lot more of it is. And so I'll just talk about a few of those little vignettes that are the norm in my relationships with high. Well, let's start with the high facilitators. Peter panics, apparently, and behaves completely irrationally, and does the opposite of what is his nature to do. Peter is a lover. He wants to care. I mean, if Peter doesn't feel scared, Peter will stick his neck out to take care and respond. He loves that feeling of helping someone. That's his nature. But he abandoned that nature to shame and attack someone because he touched on an area where he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know that he didn't know. He was afraid to admit. He was afraid to learn. And once it got into some of this taboo cultural terrain where the law and all that is involved, he didn't and wouldn't ask for help. So that's this last round. 10 years ago, same thing. You can't propose a sexual relationship in a therapeutic context and propose doing MDMA together and have your client pay for it in a virginal state who didn't come to you for that. You can't say, gosh, I mean, I'm not saying Peter didn't have sincere feelings and all that in that. I'm just saying this is so outside the cultural norm of what we in our culture consider appropriate and healthy. Plus it broke his agreements. Plus it broke the law. And then it ended up hurting me. So how can he go for help if he's attached to staying in this role so he can help more people and all that? So it's kind of dividing him. His lack of skill and preparation, his lack of patience, his lack of training divides him in a situation like that, where one part of him wants to, do whatever it takes for the client, the other one wants to protect high in the career. Now, he's using me, by putting me in the middle of that, I become the enemy, but he's made me the enemy with a lack of training, a lack of skill, with poor diagnosis and protocol. High has made Peter my enemy by not being more intimate. Sarah told me, because at several singles events, I've said, does anyone want to spend 4 hours a day together or more? And women are often outraged, 4 hours a day, But I've done the calcs. 4 hours a day is enough for a leisurely dinner, which I love to cook. It's enough for a leisurely lovemaking, which grounds and brings the PTSD energy down. Orgasm is a very helpful tool. It's enough for some processing and growth and real intimacy for an hour of really serious, intimate building conversation. And it's enough for some playful, right brain art and stuff like that. And it's enough not for those things to feel rushed. And rush immediately triggers the PTSD. 4 hours is the minimum date that I can come out balanced and unrushed and not revved up. You try 100 dates, every single one less than 4 hours, is anxious and stuff like that. It's miserable. That's not a sustainable relationship. So it takes 4 hours. So I'm doing the high 100%. Who wants to spend 4 hours a day? Did he say 4 hours a day or 4 hours a week? We can't. We've got lives. We've got tennis and this, I just got back from spending 24/7 for 2 months. The woman, we've been tracking her growth in multiple areas. 2,000% growth. Me, 400% healing and well-being. No therapists involved. This is replacing and doubling the impact of $600 a week in Western protocol therapy. That's how pathetic Western therapeutic protocol is relative to that protocol for me. But since almost no one even considers it because it's so far outside of the norm, how many people are even doing comps? I spent a year doing comps. Spending money, I spent $30,000 in all kinds of areas, and then I looked at what brought the most well-being for the least amount of money for the most amount of time. Thailand was one of the top 2. I go to Thailand. In Thailand, this is not outrageous. This is healthy and normal. Nor is it nitpicking about who's going to do this and that and the other. I see you. I want you to be happy. Let's connect this way. There's a great deal of feminine energy. It's very, very healing. Very, very, very healing. I really hope everyone gets to experience what it's like to be that way and be in relationship with someone that way. Because it's beautiful. I cannot. The woman, the 64-year-old energy healer that I broke up with after she betrayed me about 8 times in a few months. It's betrayal after betrayal after betrayal, lie after. And she's in the top 20% of 70 lovers. It's, what do you do when that's what you get? And I think it's apparently worse in men with what I'm dealing with and how helpless I feel in the situation. And yet I hear plenty of women complaining the same thing. It's like, but this is not the individual's nature or fault. when you travel the world, one of the things I got to see is babies. Like I saw a baby Thai woman that was raised in Australia, and then a Westerner raised in Thailand. And the Thai woman raised in Australia was exactly like a Western Aussie woman, and she was scornful and dismissive of the femininity of the Thais, and out kite surfing with me, and of course all women are like this. She thinks this is a choice. She thinks she's this way because she chooses to be this way. I say you're the only Thai woman who's behaving like the average Aussie. This wasn't a choice. This is just where you were raised. Culture is enormous. Enormous. How you are seeing me is not your choice to a very large degree. And to the sense that it is, to the degree that you kind of swing into my camp and look at things the way I do, it takes an enormous amount of will and distinction. And what are you rejecting? Do you know what you're rejecting to get there? Do you know why? It's like, I've been working on this since I was 14. Diary, thoughts, feelings, actions, synthesis. New action in response to thought, feeling, and action synthesis. What's the result? What's the new result I want? What needs to change? Do that the next day. Same thing. Thousands of pages. And just boycotting Western education, which also, just puts me in a different perspective. So, what you're seeing here is someone who's done that for 30 years, not someone who's gone to Western college and this and that and the other. And I've never had a job in my life. I've managed my own time since I was 14 years old. So I am not an American by that standard. I'm a Dane raised in this particular culture, and I'm trying to take a stand for people's emotions, the value of their emotions, and sensitives, because this seems to be the biggest source of pain, undiagnosed trauma and sensitivity. So what can be done, of course, is read the book on sensitivity, read the book on trauma. But in these vignettes, which I would now diagnose as classic PTSD and trauma, and immediately recommend one of the books that I've suggested. But Anne didn't. She did something very intelligent. So, scenario 1. I meet a woman from another country. We're very attracted to one another. We agree to be monogamous in a clear container until the end of level 4. And then we will stop because she's from another country, and that'll be our container, but we will be completely monogamous for that time. I make love with her, and unlike some other women, I don't fall in love at all. I feel like the sex is absolutely meaningless for me, but I choose the discipline of love, of being loving. It's not about attraction or what I feel. It's how can I help this woman feel respected, honored, cared about for this workshop. I carry on in the discipline of love. I thought about renegotiating and all that, but it seemed, I asked her basically, I without in any way hinting I wanted out, I just said, is this good for you? We've made love, we've spent 24 hours together. Is this good for you? Do you want to continue? And she said yes. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be loving. So I was there. She wanted to keep seeing me outside the workshop, and she had a couple of weeks. But she had some appointments with friends. So goes into my coping strategy. The walking stick that is protecting me from overwhelming loneliness, dread, rage, hate, fear, all this partitioned repressed emotion from my childhood. My walking stick that's helping me not fall into that pit is control. In this case, control of time and things. So we have a very clear container, and I can hold to that, and I won't fall off balance. It's my walking stick. Now, I don't have a lot of trust of the organic nature. When people say, oh, I'm going to go off on this, then they often call up and say, oh, then, and that will just collapse me. So it's not that I want to, it's this is my walking stick. So I tell her, we can either end it now, or you can make an ironclad promise that you're going to start it at this point, and you will be back and putting us first at this time, at this day. And you can say whatever time and day you want, but I don't want it a minute later. You pick the time and the date, but I want that container solid. Now, I don't know, I can't tell her this is a coping mechanism. I can't tell her I have PTSD. I can't tell her what I will feel if she breaks this, because neither I nor any therapist, including Peter Sandhill, has empowered me to have any window into what's going on. And what's going on is so painful and miserable that my conscious self doesn't feel safe to look at it. But it will send the signal. It will coordinate with me. It will give me the data points. I'm absolutely confident if this is honored, if I do it like this, it'll work. Now, I'm an unusual person that I'll go with that. I listen inside. What do I need for this to work? I am not up for doing this normally. Okay, but how could I do it? I need this, this, and this. Okay, I need this, this, and this. Can you do it? Yes, I can do it. Okay, we're good. She made it back within 10 minutes. They raced the car, all this stuff. But she honored the boundary. She honored the walking stick that I needed. Without demanding, without pontificating, without kicking the walking stick away and telling me I was being so unreasonable. She respected the boundary and she honored it. Initially, there was no feeling for me. Initially, it was more of a being of service. She's at my house, and she's got a compulsion. I can tell that she is addicted. She's not present for our sexuality. She is desperately moving. And I know she's blocking something. So I stop moving. And I hold her and look in her eyes. And she bursts into grief. Uncontrollable grief. Her walking stick in trauma, among other things, was sexual addiction, sexual compulsion. By stopping and loving her there, it was a very transcendent moment. And her compulsion came down. Over a period of time, she said the depth of my love and caring for her healed a very deep craving and need. Switch to another moment. I'm now in her country. I assumed she would be present for me, but she's not at all present. She is a frazzled entrepreneur. She's not present for anything. There isn't one moment where she's as present for me as she was in the visit when she was on vacation. I am in agony. I hate it. I feel completely lonely. I feel desperate. I feel angry. I feel violent and in pain. And I'm wrestling with it. What do I have to do? What do I have to do? What do I have to do? How am I going to... I said, I'm going to go home. I I've never seen you like this. I've never felt like this around you. It's terrible. I can't be with this endless, be with you in a minute, and then it's an hour, be with you this, and there's this, and now it's, and then you're never there. And of course, what I couldn't put into words is we're in early childhood bonding attachment repetition. We're in a larger or a smaller, depending on how you look at it, fractal repetition of the early bond with mom. And you're doing just what she did, never there, never there. Constant desperation. We're in the stage of desperate need, and you're never there, and you're breaking every promise. And I'm starting to hate you the way I hated my mother, because hate is not a choice. Emotions reflect their environment. This was a reflection of desperate, vulnerable need in an environment of complete sociopathic disconnection, which creates helplessness, rage, hurt, disappointment, and that is all given this label. The feeling is hate. As a result of my bonding to you, I'm in more pain than I could possibly be in. And you're doing everything to make it worse, and you're not listening, you're not listening, you're not listening. So I get Anne on the phone, and I describe the situation. And Anne doesn't know enough to say, this sounds like PTSD, this sounds like this and that. She just says, well, she knows the woman who's an assistant as well. And, well, why don't you do what Dane asks? Oh, do what Dane asks. He's flown all the way over to see you. Do what he asks. She said, okay. I said, okay, you have got me so wired up. I don't want you to break our presence. I don't want you to move without saying, Dane, I'd like to disengage. Are you ready to break the bond? Can you do it? Yes, I can. Where are you going? Oh, I need to go. You've just broken the bond. You've just thrown me aside again. No, I didn't throw you aside. I just wanted, I don't care what you wanted to do. We just agreed. Can you say, Dane, I'd like to go and include me. Let me prepare before you sever the connection. I am frazzled at this point. I have been betrayed and betrayed in this 2-year-old state, this 1-year-old state, more than 30 times in the last few days. And I'm trying to repair that so that I don't hate you. Could you at least keep this agreement? Could you at least, yes, I will keep the agreement. Okay, be present. Where are you going? I have to use the bathroom. Fine. But you haven't included me. You've just gotten up. You've broken the connection. I was just I can't trust a word out of you. And I looked in her eyes, and I saw a crazed deer in the headlights. And I thought, this is a joke. She's so dissociated in this overstimulating, over-responsible environment with her limited coping skills. She doesn't have any language to talk about her experience. But she is my worst nightmare right now. And Anne could not shed any light other than tell her to do it. She couldn't. I took the matter into my hands. Good old control coming up. We are never going to meet in your home again. I've had the worst month I can imagine. I've spent money and time off work to have that miserable month. I get that you're doing your best, and it is toxic for me. You're just rewounding and rewounding this sensitive little young. I feel like a 1-year-old that's just being poked and poked and poked. That's me in this moment in our relationship at your house, in your country, with your level of communication skills and groundedness. That's me, and I hate it. So she just came over to me. That solved it. So relationship number 1 falls apart. I'm just giving little samples. See, anyone with an eye would say, how old do you feel, Dane? 1 or 2 years old. You've probably got trauma there. What's trauma? It's overwhelming stuff that gets suppressed when you don't have safe parents. Well, I didn't have safe parents. Well, that's what you're dealing with. When she breaks that container at this stage in the relationship, because you're reliving that, because you're bonding, you're going through again what you went through at 1-year-old when your mother was never there. And because it's trauma, because you felt your life was in danger, it's just too overwhelming for you to deal with. This is not a rational terrain. Don't judge yourself, and don't let anyone else judge you either. But you both need to be very sensitive, because why aren't you paying attention when he's doing this? This is not rational behavior. It's not rocket science to say, may I disengage right now? I'd like to go do this, and then I'll be back in 10 minutes and watch the clock and be back. That is not rocket science. You are a smart 50-year-old woman. You're a high team member. This is not loving. It's you can see you're bringing the one you say loves you the most in absolute agony. What is going on here? And of course, the same thing. Childhood trauma, terror of being abandoned, terror of doing it wrong. Leading to a blind, I'll do it, just don't leave me, I'll do it. But that is so panicky. You haven't even grasped what you've agreed to. You don't even know. You've just said anything at all to stop you from going home. Anything. I'll do it. You've got 2 traumatized people who don't know what trauma is, who don't know how to cope with it, traumatizing one another by having conflicting coping strategies of a trauma neither knows how to deal with. Sample number 1. Sample number 2. Another high team member. Wonderful woman, very compatible in many ways. The relationship is just getting started. She wants to go on this extravagant $10,000 trip looking at whales in a way where there's no cell phone coverage. There's just this little window in radio coverage. And I hate needing people in this place. I hate the idea. I just hate the fact that for me not to fall to pieces in this terrain of relationship, I need her not to go on that trip. I hate fighting for that. I hate bullying for that. I hate pushing. I just say, I think it's going to be really, really hard for me if you go at this stage in the relationship. I really need you a lot. I want to be bonding about 3 hours a day to calm down and just know we're coming. Would it be all right with you if you didn't go? She says, no, it's not really. I said, okay, it's going to damage the relationship. I'll do what I can. She goes. I break down. And I'm desperately trying to bond. Who else is stably there? And there's several other women interested in me. And so I start bonding with one. And that woman is there. It's a long-distance relationship. This is not talking about sex or anything. She's there. I can talk to her. I can calm down. I can feel in a woman's presence. So that's answering this 1 to 5-year-old panic. Okay. This woman, because she's there for my 1 to 5-year-old, becomes far more important than my much more compatible girlfriend who lives nearby and has real potential. But that woman repeats the traumatic wound for 10 days running to such a degree that it's very hard for me to open up to her again. Meanwhile, this other woman has been there for me every day. And I knew that the first woman felt hurt, jealous. Why do you just run into another woman's arm immediately? I'm gone, da 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 da. She didn't understand. She is a psychotherapist. Psychotherapists often like me, by the way, and it's great. I mean, they have some language to talk and they have some interest in inner world, so it's a good foundation. She's a psychotherapist. She doesn't know what trauma, she doesn't see the symptoms of trauma. She doesn't say the word. She doesn't recommend any reading. She starts going into panic because she really wants to marry me. She really wants to marry me. And after she comes back and she saw how devastating, she says, I will never leave you again. We'll do things together. And I say, okay. Then we try to grow the relationship. She's got this very narrow schedule. We have basically 90 minutes a day. Because she's got her cat, she's got this, she's got her work, she's got her sleep, she's got this. And she's a sensitive. And she's got trauma. But she isn't telling me what the trauma is. She isn't speaking it. She doesn't know how to deal with it. But I'm asking her to shift her lifestyle into this space where we have 4 hours a day. And she's saying, Dane, I've worked really hard to get my life into this balance. I'm really scared of losing this balance. Who's scared? Not a mature, adventuresome adult. Someone with repressed trauma who has a coping strategy of this precise balance. It has to be that shape or I lose it. And so again, right back into the same thing. It's often called the power struggle. I would say it is the conflict between two incompatible coping strategies that are both protecting someone from unresolved trauma. There is no logical reason to hold on to this shit. She's a wonderful woman. If I could just snap my fingers and say, fine, we'll do it your way, 90 minutes a day, and let's build up some safety for you, and maybe in a year you can quit your job and whatever and do it my way. Because that's more fun. You'd like it more, I'd like it more. It's just you're in this panic right now. Let's do it your way. But I couldn't do it. At 90 minutes, I was shaking. I was feeling scarce. I was feeling tight. Like, am I going to be able to maintain this connection, or am I going to flip and have to completely shut it down quickly, like I did when she left? Because 90 minutes isn't enough for me. I feel like I'm losing the safety and the connection faster than I can build it in 90 minutes. Because the trauma is encroaching, and I need strong resources and buffers to keep the relationship as a safe haven where that trauma doesn't overwhelm me. Again, something I don't know the name for, I don't know the physical biology of, I don't know the source of, and I don't know the technique to heal. So I'm not safe for her or me. She's not safe for me or for her. She's not safe to herself. That relationship is lost. That relationship is lost because I couldn't maintain my identity. See, the crutch is partly the identity that's protecting you from the true feelings of trauma. It's a mask of some kind. And identities are formed by what you do, what you say, what you think, what you feel. Like a work is a good protective identity. It's really strong. There's clear guidelines of what is and isn't professional. And so if you're in that identity, it'll protect you from a lot of repressed stuff if that's the goal. And it is the goal until you have the skill and the help to get out of that repressed stuff. which is not part of our education curriculum. It's part of almost every American's childhood to be traumatized, and it is part of no child's curriculum to learn how to heal the trauma or the parents. So it is sociopathic. It is, it's a lose-lose system right now, which is why I'm talking about it. I can't maintain for the amount of risk emotionally to be attached to any woman, given the bond and the repressed wound that we're dealing with Mom. I need a more solid thing, a more solid pattern lock, or I can't hold on. She's too scared to give it to me because of the impact of her life. She's in tears about it. She's terrified. She's considering leaving her job, because that would be one thing. She won't leave her cat because her cat is her primary crutch. Her cat has been there as the crutch against trauma. So it's not just a cat. It's not just a stick. It's the wall between the human psyche and unbearable emotion at an overwhelming dose. And if we can keep reminding ourselves that these weird obsessions that people have nothing to do with the things and cannot be approached on a rational level. Hoarders, for example, pack rats. Nothing to do with the thing. But every single item becomes part of the wall that protects them from high doses of unbelievably painful, unresolved emotion being carried in their body that threaten their sense of survival. And if you threaten the sense of survival, that often leads to a reactivity that is volatile enough to threaten the actual survival. I've almost died 3 times because Hai kicked out my crutch. Peter whacked it away right and left, and then Hai whacked it away. They took away all certainty that I could count on them as soon as they said this isn't a Hai issue. You can't lean on that. So there's nothing there. I'm all alone. I've got no community without these folks. And this is, just surges of emotional ties. Much stronger than physical senses when they're at that dose. So I'm nearly getting into car accidents, jobs are going poorly, I can barely make, can I wake up? Trying to cope with trauma without effective tools is life-threatening. And we know that. That's why we're keeping the crutch. That's why we're willing to lose one love after another. If they will not understand and love us enough to help us either heal the trauma or work around the crutch that we need more than we need them. Because we don't choose people in our lives. If they threaten to expose us to trauma without support and education, and if they disrespect the crutches, the stick that we need to protect ourselves from that state. I have chosen to protect myself from those emotions and my concern for my life and the life of a partner hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of times, even while being in an aching state of loneliness and isolation. Because instinctively I knew I could not deal with that alone. And no one in this country, from the parents who abused me, to the tutors, to the psychotherapists, to the energy workers, to the psychics, none of these fucking astrologers or psychics said, you're born on the day that has trauma, read this book. It's just, they all have the thing, oh, come do this, come do that, I have a reading, I see this about you. the most glaring thing. And I would tell these people, like, I remember calling up my shaman, Steve. I said, Steve, every time I go to this job site alone and I start to move my body, I freeze. And I don't have a clue what's going on. He says, well, let's talk about it. So, 2 weeks later, after not being able to function well, that's our fucking protocol in this culture. Oh, come by and talk about it in 2 weeks. Isn't it wonderful? You know, just disrupt your life for 2 weeks, be in terror, be in the unknown, not be able to make any money. And the wizard will see you in 2 weeks. Well, that does sound interesting. Let's look at what your muscle, okay, your soul says this. I'm going to clear off some things on your spine, da-da-da. Makes absolutely no difference. I solve it myself, as usual. It seems to only happen when I'm alone. So I hire an extra person to accompany me. That's it. I can't be doing physical work alone. That's the rule. That's the new rule. Otherwise my body freezes. I have enough sense not to fight my body on this, because there's an element of dread around it. And so I stopped working on my own. Perfectly good body. No need for an assistant. I enjoy my own company in theory. But as of 2003, no more physical work working alone. That's the new rule. I mention it. I say how maddening it is to notice these different things and no one says a thing about it. I said, you can't just have people randomly freezing at their work with perfectly good bodies and nobody knows what's going on. I mean, this is a joke. This is outrageous. I feel like I'm a complete idiot because you guys don't have it together. What am I paying you for if you don't even know what this is? And if I'd read any of these books, I'd say, aha. Getting involved with your body, that's where your trauma is stored, number one. Number two, this is a big reservoir of stuff you don't know that is there. You've been so dissociated from it to survive. Number three, trauma cannot be dealt with alone. It's not safe on the road, etc., etc., etc. Your body is shutting down so that you won't push through the emotional wave because you've got no other people to distract you. So you're going to drift towards your past relationships. And engaging your body is going to engage these memories. So your body is protecting you. Ah, okay, let's go to a trauma specialist. Let's read the books. Let's do this. And let's reclaim my body so that I can work alone. That never happened. Instead, surrounded by ignorance and incompetence as a result of that ignorance, I tell one person after another, I know this is a significant fact. I know that if I'm dealing with someone who knows what they're doing, this is a thread they can follow. Not a single person gets the scent. And so I start talking about this. What about the fact that I can't sleep when someone touches me? What about the fact that this? Or about the fact that I have to shut my eyes when I'm doing hand on heart? What about any of these things? Any? Oh, that's interesting. I'm not asking if it's interesting. I'm giving you data that a good pattern analyzer who understands psychology ought to be able to thread this together, and no one's doing it. I don't want to just pay hundreds of dollars, in this case hundreds of thousands of dollars, just to have people listen to it. I'm scared every time I think about it because this came on suddenly. Who knows when the next weird thing? Am I just no longer going to be able to work with or without people? I mean, what's going on here? You know, and this is terrifying. So it adds to the trauma because it's unknown and mysterious, because it's threatening survival. Now the symptom, the protection, now the crutch of not being able to work alone is adding to a mental thing, because I'm saying my energy is going down. I've got chronic fatigue, suppression of trauma. I can't work alone on a job, so my money has to go up. I've got to spend another $200 a day just for company, which is a coping mechanism. You know how much that is over 10 years? $200 a day for 10 years to be able to work? Because nobody knows what they're doing? Because no one can follow that scent? I haven't a clue. So this is another little invent, and this really gets at me. It's one of the reasons I've had. So I start getting a bit passive aggressive to my energy worker, making jokes at his expense, a little bit what I was doing to Peter. All my jokes basically boil down to, without wanting to jeopardize the relationship, because he's the only person that I can talk to, even though he doesn't know what he's doing in this terrain, I can talk to him, so I feel a little bit safer. So I just make jokes that basically make him look like an idiot in the joke, as my way of kind of straddling the fact that I'm scared and I'm furious, but I have nowhere to direct it because I don't know what I don't know. And I'm furious about that. I mean, I could be hurt. People could be hurt. My reality is going down the tubes in some, and I can't even track it because I can't find a single person at Kaiser, the psychics, the energy, the astrology, the Anne, Peter, high workshops, this. Where's the commitment to me winning here? You know, it's like, you know, and then relationship partners, they just get glazed eyes. You know, gosh, I never heard of that. Well, thanks a lot. I guess I'll just keep doling out the $200. Now I have to figure out how I can make more money to pay for more therapy to try and figure this out, and pay for the $200 in the meantime, and work less because I can't move. This is very scary for a human being to go through and realize that no one else has a clue. I have a clue because a stranger in a health food store told me. That's the state. That's the state. So that's that little vignette. Stressing the relationship. When I'm scared, I get more aggressive. Obviously, you've noticed. You know, it's like, doesn't anyone care? You know, what's going on here? I get more aggressive because I'm scared. I'm counterphobic. So the more undertone I have that stuff is not right, the more I start pushing. Like, where is this going? I shove at my energy worker from time to time. You know, I give him a shaking about once a year at least, you know, like, come on, Steve, this is pathetic. We're not doing anything. You're just clearing off the same mother waves. You're doing this and you're doing that. Get it together. I mean, go to some more workshops. Learn about more shamanism. You know, do something. You know, track what's happening. This isn't working. Well, it works that he's listening, but it's not shifting. And I don't feel very comfortable in that aggressive thing, but I feel scared enough. And what's really scaring me is the fact that everyone's just looking at it as if it's nothing. I'm seeing a clue that could destroy my life. And they're saying, interesting. And they're not saying, interesting, let me ask 10 more questions that would show me what to do. They're saying, interesting, next topic. It's like, well, wait a minute. You don't have any ideas about that? Well, no. No books? No. No medicine? No referrals? Anyone else who has any idea? No. So I'm stuck with you. You know, I'm tired of weeding through people at a, 1/3 failure, 1/3 neutral, 1/3 positive rate and having to pay for it all. And then having half of them get all upset that I'm getting aggravated about this. I'm tired of people saying, oh, just come in and it'll be wonderful. I was like, I don't care if it's going to be wonderful. Do you know why I can't work without an employee and move my body. I can do electrical work and stuff that doesn't engage the aerobic muscles. I can think, I can do design work alone. I can stay in my head and be alone, but I cannot do the kind of work I've been doing. I started alone. What's going on? Do you know that? Well, let's do some acupuncture and do you know what I'm talking about? I don't want to have needles stuck in me. Well, just try 3 sessions, calm down, try 3 sessions. People are getting better. Da, da, da. It's like, okay, you're all freaked out. I'll either try it, nope, feel miserable. Acupuncture felt terrible. I felt depressed and out of sorts for 3 days. And I said, I feel depressed and out of sorts. And I know I can feel it about the acupuncture. Is that what's supposed to be happening? No? Well, it is happening. Well, you want to do another session? Of course I don't want to do another session. I want someone who knows what they're doing. Anyone. Doctor, God, fucking Lazarus, hi, anyone that knows what they're doing. I mean, don't we care enough about people on this planet? They'll spend billions on this and that, little making a phone smaller. When this is going on, this really gets at me. But this just pushes more people away. You're probably pushed away hearing this side. I'm mirroring it. I'm going through these stages because I want you to understand how painful, how lonely, how terrifying it is to be all alone in this country where nothing means anything unless you have money. And to have one person betray you after another, happily take that money, and no one commit to finding out how to help. I have been alone since I was 1 year old. Just the luck of the draw, finding what I could, learning what I could, rebelling right and left to survive. With everyone against me. Don't leave school, it worked wonderfully. Don't do this, it works wonderfully. Don't do that, works wonderfully. It's like, why is everyone against me? Why is everyone telling me to do what doesn't work? And I have to figure it out. I hate it. I want help. I want support. And I don't want to feel like I have to look at people with distrust, because my life might be in danger. So next vignette. High team member. Very nurturing mother energy. I bond with her on the floor, cuddling in a high workshop. I say, I would love to spend more time with you. She says, well, I can't do anything like what you want, 4 hours a day, anything like that, nothing like that. I said, I know, no one can. I mean, it's just one rejection after another. Everyone hurts. She says, but I think we should go and spend a day together. And I tell her, I say, don't say that unless, 1, you really mean it. 2, you will follow up and set a day within the next, month. And 3, you'll actually do it. Don't say it. It's going to hurt our relationship. She says, we're going to do it. I said, please don't say it unless you're going to do it. She said, we're going to do it. I'm going to make the time. Of course, 2 months go by, nothing. She doesn't acknowledge the broken commitment. She's set that young part up for betrayal. She's a nice person. Of course she's not trying to hurt me, but I'm hurt deeply every time this happens, because I'm not a 40-year-old man. I'm a frozen 2-year-old at that moment in the relationship. I'm a desperately lonely, terrified for his life 2-year-old. And I don't want to hear any theory. about why that's good or bad. It's what it is. And I'm not going to shut that part down or deny its existence just because no therapist or high has given me any tools to work with it. I care about what is inside, what actually is, and that's what is, and that's what works. But how can I protect that self when I'm isolated because no one is able or willing to meet that need, number one. Number two, when they say they will, they set me up for betrayal so often. I feel mixed grief and despair at the odds. It's like, are you going to be the one person who actually does it out of 10 that sets me up? Should I be happy that you're probably one of the 9? Or that you might be the one? Should I be happy that I'm playing these odds? Or should I just isolate from the whole human race? Because people are hurting me and hurting me and hurting me. And they're adding salt in the wound. You're at choice. I am not at choice. It is up to other people. When I communicate what I need for reasons I can't articulate, because no one's given me the language, after paying hosts of them, I am not at choice. I hate this culture. I'm not interested in buying things. I'm not interested in growing my business more. I'm interested in figuring out what's going on and having good relationships. And that's not happening. Not because I don't have the time, not because I don't have the money, not because I don't have the articulating skills to ask for what I need and want, but because either people are judging me for asking, or judging me for being that direct, or don't want to do it, or calling it controlling, or do want to do it but don't care enough to actually do it, or do want to do it and do care but don't realize how important it is and go and do something else, so that I get rejected 9 times out of 10 and find myself emotionally falling to the floor, not as a man where this is just an acquaintance, it's no big deal and we can reschedule, but as a 2-year-old facing terror of survival, facing desperate need for someone safe, having mom's legs kicked away, one time after another. The same person who becomes Teamco, a few months later, another person had really shown up. Amazing. She was the one. Amazing. She'd really shown up. It was so medicinal and healing. I was so grateful to her. She'd told the other Teamco, the same woman. The other Teamco says, I'm going to do that too. Thanks for telling me what day needs. And she emails me and she says, I want you to know I've talked with this other Teamco. I learned what worked and I'm going to be there for you this weekend. And I just want you to enjoy and relax knowing that. And I was like, well, you're the woman who said you were going to definitely spend a day together when I begged you not to say that unless you were serious, because I didn't want to hurt the relationship. So now let's see what it is. So let's try number 1. May I spend time with you right now? Can I tell you what's going on for me? No, I'm too busy. I'm the Teamco. Okay, so why did you email me and say, please make sure I'm going to be there? Because you're not saying, this isn't a good time, come back in 15 minutes and I will definitely be there for you then. You're just saying, not a good time, brush off. Okay, let's try another round next day. How about now? No, brush off. Not, let's meet at lunch. So it's like you just set me up twice in the worst possible way, despite everything I could possibly say. I hate you. I fucking hate you. Because I don't want to hate you. Because I don't want this part in me to be hurt. Because I don't want our relationship soured. And if you could just be big enough to admit your limitations and stop over-promising, there would be no damage. But you have to pretend that you're so much bigger than you are, that now I don't want to hear anything from you. Now, yet again, I have to choose isolation because you're hurting this part more than you're helping. And who wants to be closer to someone if the pain goes up more than the pleasure? This is the variable. I told you. I can tell you again, but you're too busy to listen. You're not asking, how is this for you? It's an 8 out of 10 negative. I'm feeling completely unwelcome. I'm feeling set up again. Could I talk about all this pattern and how frustrating it is for an hour in front of the group? No. Keep it short. Get beyond the story. Get to the nugget. It's very hard to get to the nugget of something you're desperately trying to put into words. It's all these disparate patterns when no one's even given you language. In a culture that says emotions aren't important, they're just for, that's just a, that's a woman's, that's constant condescension towards the feminine. So there's that relationship blown. I'm having a really hard time. After Peter has done this, this last thing, after the psychedelic experience, Peter Sandhill is dropping the ball. I go to a workshop with Peter Wrangle. I'm finding it very hard to be present in one of the opening exercises. Peter Wrangle is walking around the room in semi-darkness, setting thermostats. I go up to him and say, "May I approach?" He says, "Not right now." He doesn't say, "Do you need something? Can you go to so-and-so? How is it, 1 to 10, how important this is?" This is an 8 out of importance. I'm wondering, should I leave the workshop now? No. So I'm being induced into this state by Peter Sandhill, who doesn't know what he's doing, and then I'm going to high, and I'm asking for support that I don't know how to articulate by Peter Wrangle, and I'm being brushed off without any assessment of what's needed. I approach Peter Wrangle again. "May I approach? Is this a good time to talk?" No. And there's not, "I'd love to talk with you at lunch." No, and no. That's my experience of Peter Wrangle. And these things are delicate. It's very, very delicate to get anywhere near the traumatic terrain. So if people are busy, it's an unsafe place, period. If people are busy, everyone's busy. There's no place to just meander gently into this for 6 hours and learn something and be sure. Like, here's the other thing that's very traumatizing. I meet a woman at dance. I invite her over. She loves it. We have a great chat up on the rooftop. And in the middle, mid-sentence, she just says, "Gotta go." I say, "Would you mind including me in the closure, giving me a bit of lead time, and checking in with me about, how am I with finishing my sentence?" She says, "No, I've got to go." I say, "Is this like an emergency or anything like that?" She says, "No, I just feel like going." I said, "That's okay, but this is a nightmare ending for me. I'd like 15 minutes of notice, and I'd like to be included, and I'd like, how does it feel to end?" We agreed to set this up together. We began this circle together, negotiating when it would begin and how and what we would do together. And you are ending it unilaterally and abruptly. And it's one of our first meetings, and it's dissociating for me. She says, I need my freedom to go whenever I want to go. I say, "You've got it. You can leave this instant, but I don't think I'm going to have another date with you because of the way it affects me." Well, no one's going to tell me what to do. No sensitivity. We're just going to try and whack at that walking stick. I said, please respect yourself, and I can take care of this, but I'm not going to set myself up for this again. She left. And then she sends me an angry, hurt email. She wants to see me again. And I'm like, you have no idea what you put me through with that abrupt ending. You didn't want to hear, you didn't want to understand, you didn't include me, you didn't partner with me. And I don't want to do that again. And you're angry and you're defensive. You're not apologizing. You're not saying, how was it for me that you knocked that walking stick out from under me and I'm laying on the ground? You don't know how disappointing it is to know that that's American style and that you're normal. That this is what I have to deal with in this country every day. Beginnings are mutual, endings are unilateral. Beginnings are communicated around, endings are just dissociated. Yeah, done with that. Yeah, bye. So then I have to control that. Good old control. You want to have a date together? Well, here's what I like. I like to talk about the endings before they end. Does that feel good? Well, I'm not sure. I've never done that before. Well, it seems considerate and courteous to me. Like, I'm not going to just mid-dinner or something kick you out of my house. How about you don't just mid-dinner walk out and say, how are you doing? 15 minutes is about right. Could you do that? Now, this is sometimes a deal breaker. Number one, it's most often a source of suspicion and resisted tolerance, which doesn't make me feel safe at all. I'm desperately trying to fight to protect from a swelling of emotion and a wound that I'm not yet skilled enough to deal with, that no one will help me with. And everything that I try and navigate that will make that graceful, people are judging, complaining, resisting, and no one's asking, how does it feel? What goes on for you? Do you know why? No one follows that through. No one even wants to know. They want me to know how they feel that I've asked them to do it. They don't want to know how I feel. So it feels completely lonely. People could give a shit that I'm terrified. People could give a shit. They just like the fact that I'm interesting. It's completely self-absorbed. You know, one person after another, you're such an interesting person to talk to. I've never met anything like that. You're smart, you're this, you're very successful. Oh, gosh, the way you travel, I love that lifestyle. Yeah, you love all that. Great. But what's it like to be me? Do you want to know? Do you want to know what I care about? Do you want to know what will make this relationship work beautifully for me and what will make it hell for me? And do you want to attune to that with me? And do you want to share the same? Nah, that's a bit too much work, a little bit too much. Maybe in a few months if I get to know you. Maybe if I get to know you in a few months, then I'd like to get to know you. I'm like, well, how's that going to work? So you're going to do the opposite of what's good for me for 2 months, and if I put up with that, you'll get to know me enough that then you might listen to what's good for me. That's it? Yeah. Well, I've always found the best way to get to know someone is to actually spend time and get to know someone. Do you want to spend 4 hours in the next 7 days and get to know me by talking about if you really knew me, talking about what a good friend looks like to both of us, talking about our logistics, talking about our dreams, talking about our peak experiences we want to create? No. Maybe in a couple of weeks. Well, you've just broken the container. I can't hold an identity of a maybe in a couple of weeks, so I've got to cut you off emotionally. Gosh, well, you're awfully abrupt. And you don't know a thing about me because you don't want to, because you don't make the time. Because you don't make the time. So I'll be judged again. I'll be rejected again. I'll be abandoned again without being understood or cared for or helping me validate this very fragile coping system that I'm using. And I can go to a therapist and pay them $100 an hour, and they can say, oh gosh, I'm sorry you're going through that. And again, not illuminate what this is all coping for, the root dis-ease, the root issue, and heal it, so that we're all of us. These are just, as I say, 50 lovers within the high community. These are just normal samplings. These are the kinds of things. Every single one has to do with sensitivity, trauma, PTSD, and coping skills. And every single one does not have the language and technology needed by them or by me, because although High is committed to a world in which everyone wins, they're not committed to them and me winning enough to learn about trauma or to refer everyone to this arena as a very probable consideration. Let's refer everyone to sensitivity, since it takes only 10 minutes to find out if you're part of the highly sensitive group. And let's refer everyone else to this other quiz, because it only takes about 30 minutes to be 80%, in a sense that you're 80% certain that you have trauma that needs work and where to go to get it. We're talking about 30 minutes of insightful, proactive suggestion by any of these therapists or by any of the High facilitators. And when I realized this, having stumbled upon this, after spending not just the $200,000 in cash, but more than $1 million in time off work and coping. There have been months when I've been flat on my back for 3 months, to give my body its ease around suppressing all these things that I don't know how to deal with and don't know how to bear. Because I've just been told, do talk therapy. And talk therapy sometimes makes it worse. Retriggering a talk therapy PTSD memory makes it worse. So I'm being advised to spend money to make it worse, and I'm not being helped to get the answer. So when I realized that, I think, aha, surely High that's so committed is going to want to know this. And Jason's response is, trauma isn't our thing. It's like saying plastics and chemicals aren't of interest to environmentalists. We at Greenpeace want a wonderful, healthy planet. Well, here's how you prevent petroleum. Here's how you eliminate 50% of the plastic and 80% of the chemicals. Well, we're not interested in that. We're just interested in a green planet. We're just in love. We're not interested in chemicals. Well, chemicals are what's the problem? You can't have a green planet covered in plastic. Well, we haven't thought about that, but we'll give it some thought. We'll give it some thought. If Peter didn't get it in 10 years, if the High facilitators didn't evolve anything from my letter 10 years ago, how are they going to get it on their own? No. I'm making this documentary for community and stuff because Peter Sandhill did not pay attention until I brought it to his peers. Because Anne and the facilitators did not step up to the plate at all until I threatened to break the secrecy that they wanted me to maintain about all this and possibly sue them. As I watched my costs escalating by the week and watched them making it worse and watched them refusing with one thing after another. The biggest incredulity for me, after all, like we're 6 months after Peter, did this. We're 10 years, after the first thing. We're 2.5 months into my health just tanking. And I'm screaming myself hoarse. I'm repeating myself over again. I'm freaked out. I've never been freaked out like this in my life. And it's all induced by being pushed in the exact opposite direction, pushed into secrecy. I hate secrecy. I feel safety with transparency. I don't have secrets. I've never lied to a friend, lover, high participant, or high facilitator. I've never lied. I don't believe in it. White lies or otherwise. I don't feel safe. And they're saying, we want to keep it secret. Well, fuck you. I thought my safety was what's important here. No. We can fit you in here. Just keep it. Don't, we don't have time to hear that one. Don't write to Jason. Everything that's good for me isn't convenient for high. So I'm supposed to just tank to protect a bunch of bullshit that is not safe for anyone. If the impulse is protection, this is dangerous for high. And I told them, I said, most people don't care enough about you. They'll sue you like this, like that. I said, pay attention. You're in a media world. You can't just behave this atrociously on email and on recorded phone calls and on recorded in-person sessions without licenses and without possible training with a suicidal client and think that's okay, to think that your organization will grow with that protocol. Please pay attention here, learn something, take this serious. Oh, we don't have time to listen to this. This isn't our issue. Well, when does it become your issue? When you're bankrupt? When nobody trusts you? When does it become your issue? Because I'm not dying to keep your secret. And I'm not letting anyone else die either. Because if I'm this close to dying, most sensitives do not have $100,000 in the bank, 10 books under their belt, $250,000 of workshops and therapy, and own their own business and have the kind of freedom to get help. Most sensitives don't have those resources. And when they die, unable to articulate this crap, people say, oh, isn't it sad? I had no idea. They seem such a sweet person. I wonder why. That's not going to happen here. If I die, if I don't die, my journey, people are going to learn from it and learn how to take care of themselves. You're going to learn to take better care of them. I'm going to learn to take better care of myself. Other sensitives are going to learn how to take care of themselves. That's going to happen. And since you've abnegated your leadership and responsibility by refusing, I asked you to make this public. I asked you to hire a therapist so I wouldn't get drained by your defenses and to keep me safe. I asked to be held. I asked for this. I asked for that. I asked to go to the workshop with Anne. You have just made me feel unwelcome and divided me because one part of me desperately wants to please you. And you've made me feel completely unwelcome in this situation. And I understand it, but it's not right. It's not right that I'm unwelcome here, and that I'm unwelcome here because I am unwelcome, because you've made so many mistakes that it takes much more time to mend than it would have to prevent. Peter could have prevented these mistakes over a 10-year period in less than an hour, about 45 minutes max, and I would have been very happy and felt the thing was resolved. And then for 6 months, since he repeated the pattern while on psychedelics, exposing me to all these trauma walls coming down without me knowing how to deal with it, he could have dealt with it 1 or 2 days by this complete denial and pushing all the crap onto the client and the patient at the point when they can't deal with it, it's driven me, an unusually, conflict avoidant person, to this level of confrontation because other people's lives. You've said 50,000 people are going through the high workshops. 60,000, I think it was. Well, that's almost 10,000 sensitives. How many of those people have you hurt and not known that you've hurt, and not known that you haven't known, because you've been similarly effective at deflecting, suppressing, and pretending it's not your issue? And how many gifts could those sensitives have brought your community? And how many relationships could have been marriages and actually led to an embodiment of your mission statement rather than lip service? Because nothing in the team, in the participants, in the one-on-one work, and in the workshops has said a thing about PTSD and how to deal with it. And because the workshops are highly stimulating and dimensional environments, I've experienced roughly 30 traumas during my experience with high without ever having the skill or the language to deal with it. And you could call that negligence and abuse of everyone. The other person, me, the community. People don't keep coming back and refer people when they get hurt, when they get traumatized, when they realize that if they follow you, they'll get swept to the shore on a rocky coast and capsize without any of you having the skill to get them out of it in an effective and safe way where they know what they're doing and can understand what's going on. And we need that mental piece of understanding in our culture because it's such a big deal in our culture. The seat of power in our culture is in the language left brain. So if that brain doesn't know what's going on, in other words, the definition of trauma, the best treatments for trauma, the book and all that, that part feels freaked out, and rightly so. Because in Thailand, it wouldn't be quite as big deal. When I have trauma experiences in Thailand, there's an organic kind of grouping and healing around me without the rush of schedule. And I feel safe and calmed down. They don't have the language, they don't have the books, they just do it from being a much older culture than we are. There are more people per square mile. It's a much older culture, it's a much more peaceful culture, it's a much more humble culture. It's a much more feminine culture, it's a much more balanced culture. So things just organically happen better there. So it's great coping strategy for me for a while. I just spent 2 months there. But that 2 months cost me $60,000. More than that, actually. It cost me 70. It's 30,000 every month I shut down my business. It's 10,000 in expenses. So that's a lot of money going out of the country. That's a lot of money not going into high. That's a lot of possible gifts. The books, the various projects. I'm doing a whole bunch of projects and stuff, but it's helping Thai people. They're really showing up for me in a beautiful way. So I want to give to them. Give to the artists, and it's really fun for me to have that kind of dance. But in conclusion, 50 lovers within the community, I would say that undiagnosed trauma was a major factor in all of them, and not one of them has survived. Meaning of 50 lover relationships with me and them both wanting healthy, conscious relationships, not 1 in 50 survives. I'd say that's somewhere between 1 in 10 and 1 in 100. I know people who have undiagnosed traumas and they've had 100 lovers. None has ever stuck. So to say that we're going to teach you how to be at choice and how to have an effective, loving relationship that's sustainable and and this is how to do it, and not talk about trauma, is a setup. It's a setup because there is at least a 30% chance that one or both people are going to have to deal with trauma, and they're not going to know how. And it's only a matter of time, because if someone has to choose between giving up their coping strategy, see, I also believe this is at the core of addiction. Substances in and of themselves are not that addictive. I took up smoking during this time, and I'll actually just quickly mention some of the full costs of this time. So, but just finish that thought. I took up smoking to the degree that it helped me avoid traumatic feelings, and I smoked heavily until I had another out, and then I just let it go. Smoke is a foul substance. Alcohol, pretty foul. I mean, fresh squeezed orange juice or red wine, or coffee. Coffee is bitter and sour, unless you put lots of milk and sugar. What's wrong with just orange juice? These mind-altering states, coffee, cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana, masturbating, addictive drugs, sexting, whatever, these mind-altering states are primarily trauma management. They don't help the body. They attack the body, and in that way support the repression of trauma. In the same way that food does the same thing, overeating. I overate very deliberately to avoid dreads coming up before I knew what they were. See, now I've been talking enough and I've gotten a handle on it, and I've realized that about a third of it isn't even mine. I'm just picking it up in the culture, and so I just care enough that I'm feeling it, and I'm sensitive and I'm feeling it. So a third isn't mine. A third was given to me by my parents, in the culture, and then a third is the grief at the lost lifetime, the lost opportunity, all the lost love, all the people that I have been unkind to, when they've made me choose between my coping strategy and doing what they needed. And I had to say, you don't understand. I can't let go of this stick or I'll fall over. So I can't give you what you need. I get that you need it. You should go and get it. It's healthy for you, and I'm sorry. But that doesn't mean I can let go of this stick and feel safe. And I'm sorry. And the shame that I felt around that, the inadequacy, the humiliation, the sadness, the grief, the terror, it's enormous. So a third of these overwhelming feelings are just looking at a lifetime in ruin. That I'm 20% of the man I could be because of my addiction to the coping strategies in light of an emotional thing that no one until this point has prepared me to deal with. And now that I've got much more of the techniques, it's still a problem and a big issue to find people. Because one of the sources of shame and anger in all of this is that one of the things that I'm clear on is that a great deal of this is not my sickness. In other words, I'm paying for the therapy to talk about the sickness that's out there and affecting me, that I'm symptomatic of, that I'm reactive to. It's like every time I meet a woman who apologizes for her emotions, I just want to tear my hair out because it's been more than 600 times It's like, again, yet is everyone apologizing for having feelings? Is no one honored to embody the feminine? Does no one realize what they're missing? This is a joke. And these poor people, they're apologizing because they've been shamed so much. But the emotion is the one healthy thing, and of course you should be crying. You're feeling some of this stuff in here. Let it out. Cry. You know, the women who have trusted me to cry, it's been literally about 10, who have really let it out with me, and I've just sat with them for hour upon hour upon hour. I've been so proud of them because they're going places that I don't yet know how to go with my trauma walls and all that. I'm certainly better than I've ever been, but it's a new skill set. I'm still getting my bearings. They just cry and cry, and the beauty that comes out after they honor the sadness, the betrayal, the inadequacy, the grief of our human state at this point, and what that has obscured, the potential that has been ransomed. To deny and shame the traumatic cycle is profound, the potential. When they weep and let that out, I mean, there's just so much beauty there. And I love being there for them. I love my awareness, as they often tell me. No one has ever done this for them. No one has ever listened. No one has ever seen and trusted the beauty beneath the veils, beneath the grief, beneath the hate, the rage, and seen who they are, and made it safe, and let them know there's all the time in the world. I've got hour upon hour upon hour. I've organized my whole life that I have time for this, because I know how important it is. The cost of doing this in a messy way, of suppressing the cost of ignorance, is high. As I say, for me, 3 near-death experiences post high facilitator protocol in reaction to high facilitator protocol. Going from $89,000 in savings to $20,000 in debt, and first time in debt in my last 10 years. It's a high financial cost. House being planned and permitted, frozen, because the county is more sociopathic than the facilitators by a factor of 3, and it's too toxic. And I didn't have the choice of dealing with the facilitators, since some part of me was in a dependent state. But I did have a choice to let go of the house, so I let go of the house for 2.5 years. Cost 2 angry clients for reasons I can understand, because I wasn't at the top of my game. So 2 angry clients. Of course, I took responsibility, owned everything they were upset about, listened, asked, learned, this and that and the other, but that's very unusual. And I would say probably 50 terrified hoteliers dealing with me in impatient, sociopathic, controlling states, when things like loud door slamming would just ruin my whole evening, and I would just have it at a time when my body was close to collapse. Abusive tirades at probably 3 or 4 people. When I say abusive, I mean I tell them exactly what I feel and saying I'm not going to cut any of this back because I don't have the space to keep stuffing this and keep balancing with what you feel and all that. This is terrible. This is hurting me. I hate this. Stop doing that. I've told you 3 times. Cut it out. It's that where we need to say goodbye. That's not a great relationship environment. And even if after the riding the crest of that bigger wave and I have a little lull, I can apologize and own it all and say it's not your fault. I'm dealing with my wounds in my culture, my wounds in my community, my rage, my parents, this, and I'm just not capable of being a healthy human being for you. It's not your fault. I apologize. I've taken an extra 3 months to 5 months off work, depending on how you count it. And I've done probably 250 hours of one-on-one healing work in the best ways that I could find, and stalled in most cases around the fact that this is such a delicate area. Once you've been betrayed and hurt by your therapist, it becomes more brittle and reactive, so then it's harder for the next therapist. Just like I meet so many women who have been shamed and hurt in their most vulnerable area, and they're very hard to love because they're always trying to look at how I'm going to set them up to shame them for being emotional, for being feminine. And this is very hard to work through. Well, I'm a very difficult client in some of this area. Not always, but can be. That I'm very reactive to certain things. And time, I've just had it with the Western protocol. There's a cost in time, and then in terms of illness and disease, my chronic fatigue and exhaustion went up 500%, and so we've got 2 years of 500% kind of more exhaustion, chronic fatigue, and real health crisis. Flat on my back for 3 of the past months. And in most of this, so terrified and overwhelmed that I could not take on any new creative projects. So I've been much more internalized, fearing backlash. I mean, it was so surprising how the facilitators responded to this, to me. I was expecting workshop protocol. Let's hear what you have to say. Thank you for coming. Honor what you have to say. Let's get you some support. How's this for you? No. Let's have some legal paragraphs. And then realizing that one of the big panics, including with Anne, because she spent about 50 hours with me. But because what I needed wasn't happening, more than about 40%, 60% of what I needed to calm down wasn't happening. And because Anne's loyalty was more to other agendas than to what I needed, and more to the secret rather than getting me alternative help. And because all of the other facilitators were more engaged with whatever they thought was important rather than being there, I felt completely alone in a terrain I couldn't care for. I felt helpless. And I went through a lot of that tenuous time with Anne, where it's like that desperate infant that doesn't have a strong enough hold to rest and yet doesn't want to fully let go. And so it's just staying in a high rev state. And it's one of those things where you don't change horses midstream, or it's all or nothing. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You don't want to get pregnant with someone who's half of a father. You don't want to drive a motorcycle with one wheel. You may want to get somewhere, but in some cases, like, no, this is not a safe vehicle. The container is not clear, safe, honored, and defined. And Peter kept breaking it right and left with blind spots, anger, complaints, and breaking boundaries and needing reminders. And I was just getting exhausted, and I felt so terrified. I felt so terrified because I felt like any minute now they're at their limit, and any minute now they're going to hurt me because they're at their limit, not because I deserve it, so I'm not safe with them. But I'm hoping maybe I could be. And then one of the final straws is I try and log into my High account. They have just blocked all email lists for fear that I talk about this and not said a word to me. No, I didn't break a single agreement, but they just truncated all communication, which is a complete reenactment of the abandonment. We don't want anyone else seeing our dirty laundry. So as we have been doing, in one final last stroke, we're just going to betray you. You need a cuddle buddy? Find it somewhere else. We're going to single you out for shame, the shame of dissociation from this community as a result of our negligence and the fact that we don't want you talking about the degree of the negligence and the fact that we are not willing to make this right. We're unable and unwilling to do what you need to get well, and we want you to go away. This is the ultimate horror. This cannot happen. And this happened to Snowden. It's happened to Julian Assange. Anyone who talks about anyone in power's dirty laundry, of course, they become enemy. But when you are putting yourself forth, see, Donald Trump is not saying he's teaching or modeling love, intimacy, and sexuality. He's not taking our money to be loving, have healthy relationships. If he did, heaven help us. He's saying, I'm going to manipulate and do this and that and get the deal and all that, and I'm going to be my normal obnoxious self to do it if it works, and it seems to work, and I'll try and do it on your behalf and put up with it. He's puts a little bit of spin on that, but that's Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump put out his little sign and said, I'm teaching intimacy, love, and sexuality workshops, and I'm a great therapist, and please call me, and then treats people like that, we're in real deep shit, and anyone should stop that from happening. So that's kind of just a couple of vignettes. Was about 20 more little examples in the community I wanted to get into, but I see all these patterns on the periphery, and if I see them there, I assume they're relevant, and hopefully they help bring something to you. And so, that's, where I'll bring things to a close for now, and just appreciate the quality of your attention.